Oh, hey, has it been 5 years already? Huh, time moves fast. Well, let's check in on our boy Tomoya and see how he's doing. I lived my life listening only to my body, not my mind. Wake up, go to work, eat, sleep. The same cycle of ingrained motions. That was how I lived those days. Oh, that's bad. Why don't you take some time off? Yeah, that's a great idea. Maybe you should. I hear those words so often that it feels like my ears ring with them, but I don't do that. I even give up my days off to keep working, but it's not as if I have a full day of work waiting for me every day of the week. There end up being times where there's nothing for me to do. One day I try spending some money to fill that void. When I do, I realize it helps me forget about everything else more than I expected it to. Whoa, dude, that is not... Like, at least spend it on something worthwhile, like my Patreon. I just realized how bad that sounds, I'm sorry. I start drinking, I start smoking, but whenever I take a look at reality, I feel like it's crumbling underneath my feet. Am I weaker than everyone else around me? Or is it just that I've experienced something more tragic than all of them? I can't figure out what it is, really. All I can say, though, is that it's too much for me. So I lose myself by moving my body, then killing time. That way, I won't ever have a spare second to think. Yeesh. To quote the Bible, this is a problem. Ever since Nagisa passed, spoilers by the way, did I mention this was a part 2 video? Tomoya has been spiraling into a deep state of depression, and if that intro was any indication, the game goes a lot more in depth with it than the anime, especially since we live inside Tomoya's sad boy brain. Two details that really sold this new characterization for me are how the game makes sure to mention that the guy does not get good sleep. In fact, he wakes up in a sweat more times than not. Kinda reminds me of my other favorite tortured soul. There's also the scene where Tomoya gets saddled with taking his daughter Ushio on a trip without Akio and Sanai. He initially doesn't want to, as he's been avoiding Ushio for the last 5 years because she reminds him of Nagisa. When Ushio realizes her dad probably won't take her, she looks as though she's going to cry. And Tomoya thinks this. Well, of course she is. She was looking forward to this trip, but then the two of them suddenly disappeared. It's not my fault if she starts to cry. It's those two's fault for playing a prank on us like this. At the risk of sounding like a Psych 101 student trying to diagnose strangers with mental conditions, I think the deflection he uses here out of a greatly expanded fear for disappointing others is really powerful, and speaks to how far he's fallen since we last saw him. Hope, however, is in the air, because while Tomoya may have tried to roleplay as Nagisa by disappearing from everyone who loves him, Akio and Sanai seem to be keen on pulling him out of despair, even after all this time. Once Sanai brings up the trip, she calls Tomoya asking him about it all the time.
We'll call you in 5 minutes.
Basically twisting his arm with kindness and persistence. But of course, once he gets there, the Furukawas decide to roleplay as Nagisa too. This gives birth to the father-daughter relationship between Tomoya and Ushio. Tomoya is not a good dad. He's pretty rude and standoffish, but without crossing the threshold into irredeemable territory. Like when Ushio breaks one of her toys, he's like, "Oh god, you're so stupid," but he still fixes it for her anyways. When she goes to the bathroom all by herself and announces it to the world, Tomoya hits her with the classic, "I can do it by myself too, but you don't see me bragging about it." And after they kill a whole day in the bakery waiting for Akio and Sanai, they see the profiles of smiling kids and their parents going on some kind of vacation outside the store. Screw it. Let's go on this trip with just the two of us. And while Tomoya may immediately regret this decision since the train ride contains nothing but happy families with two parents, yes, the game makes sure to specify that because it's evil, I can't wipe the smile off my face because I finally get to listen to Country Train. Music that uses train sounds and instills a sense of adventure in the listener is my favorite thing ever. And this is the best incarnation of that idea. I cannot overstate how much I adore this track, and while I kind of wish it was in the game more, I think using it exclusively for this scene to represent new beginnings for Tomoya and Ushio works really well. It's also worth mentioning that the town has changed a lot since we last saw it. This is shown really well in the anime, and even in the visual novel, they updated the background art with a few tall buildings that were never there before. But the poster child for change right now, even more so than the town, is Ushio. It's almost jarring to see what we've only known as a crying, screaming, literally just got born baby transform instantaneously into a kid who can actually form coherent sentences. Not only that, but you can tell the old man and Sanai have been raising her. She's mature, polite, but still has goofy habits like impersonating baseball players. I bet if Tomoya opened up to her, they'd get along just fine. Speaking of which, what's he up to right now? Oh, screaming at a child. This outburst is, again, great characterization, and it shows off probably the strangest thing that Ushio was taught by the Furukawas in the last 5 years. She runs off to the bathroom in order to cry, tries to deny it, just like Nagisa would by the way, but once it's coaxed out of her, she reveals that Sanai told her she can only cry in the bathroom. That's, stupid. Tomoya tells her this, saying that she should cry whenever she feels like it, while she still has the chance, implying that he doesn't think he has the right to cry. But I'll be the first to tell you, you never outgrow crying. It's healthy even, so go ahead, start crying right now. I'll wait. You should see your face right now. Savor it, because that's the feeling Tomoya's been denying himself for 5 years now. Anyways, they skip out on the planned trip to the zoo since they're a full day behind schedule, and make their way to the next stop on the itinerary, a big field of flowers. Ugh, the hell was that? A big field of flowers. I mean, that's cool, I guess. Tomoya hoists Ushio up on his shoulders so she can see it better, which is nice. And he watches her as she plays in the flowers with the toy robot he bought her. Almost like a dad would, you know? Words cannot describe how invested I am in this relationship. It's a combination of how much I love Tomoya already, how likable Ushio is, and how the game subtly drops hints that they both need each other more than anything right now. Tomoya, well, we know he needs companionship. Dear Lord, does he ever. And for Ushio, it's clear that Akio and Sanai haven't completely filled the void that Tomoya and Nagisa left in her, seemingly by intention. Sanai has her go cry by herself, won't tell her a thing about Nagisa, leaving that to Tomoya, and we can see at every turn that Ushio really wants this guy's attention and approval. So when Ushio loses her robot in the flower field and Tomoya is all, "This trip accomplished nothing, I'm just gonna hand Ushio back to Akio and Sanai, then resume my shitty lifestyle," it hurts, dude. I mean, here he is with a chance to make amends with his kid, and instead he's sitting here hearing the tide, then standing up and walking to the Cape where he meets his grandmother who tells him a story about his father. Smooth transition, yeah? This game wasn't comfortable just building parallels between Tomoya and Senohara, Akio, and Yusuke, no. We're gonna add his dad to the mix too, because as we know, Naoyuki also lost his wife shortly after their child was born. The difference being, Naoyuki didn't give in to despair because he still had a kid to raise. He doesn't make great decisions, always gambling stuff away and drinking excessively through hard times. But one thing the man never did was give up, even now. He's such a broken and distant person that he never even realized that his child was all grown up and able to fend for himself. And when you look at it from this angle, his past behavior starts making a ton of sense. Remember how he changed the subject to Nagisa while Tomoya was reprimanding him? Well, what if he was just more concerned about Tomoya's progress in life rather than how he feels about him? What if that bittersweet tinge of feeling like you're on your way out of something you've dedicated the last 20 years of your life to means more to you than anything else? And what if it's become the only thing you can think of to the detriment of everyone around you? To the point where you can't even comprehend that your job was done a long time ago. This guy is an idiot. Even his mom will say so because I guess being mean just runs in this family. However, as a father, he stepped up to the plate when nobody else would. And that makes him exceptional. Tomoya recognizes that and promises to bring Naoyuki back home so he can finally rest. But before we do that, I think you know what time it is. This is probably the most well-known scene in all of Clannad, and yeah, it's perfect. Tomoya tells a distressed Ushio that it's fine that she lost the robot. He can always buy her another one, but she says it's not okay. Why? Because, pussy, it was the first thing she ever got from daddy, now start crying. And that's not all. Tomoya realizes what he has to do and asks if Ushio wants to be with him from now on. She says yes, and then tells him she's sad because she lost something special, and asks if she can stop holding that in. Because you see, Sanai told her she can only cry in the bathroom, and the one exception to this rule is if she's in her father's arms. How do you write something that gut-wrenching? It doesn't even make sense. And while the CG is really nice, I do have to give props to the anime for elevating this scene so much. The perfect timing of the track The Place Where Wishes Come True too. Tomoya's VA killed it as he apologizes several times all choked up while Ushio is crying her eyes out. And the imagery of him hugging her in front of the bathroom showing us that there's no need for it anymore is phenomenal. Plus, when Tomoya finally opens up about Nagisa and unknowingly takes his own advice about crying whenever it's needed, we get by far my favorite shot from any show, movie, or game. The look on his face as years of repressed sadness and loneliness wash over him while he's re-experiencing these long-gone happy memories is perfection. If I could own an individual frame from this shot like you see people who are way cooler than me do all the time, I would be so happy. But even with that shot, I still gotta hand it to the visual novel. They go into way more depth with the Nagisa recap, all while Anna plays in the background, and it's just so much better. I love the way he tells the story with so much nostalgia and appreciation. I love the way they show several clips of Nagisa telling him they'll always be together right before Tomoya starts to cry. And I especially love how Tomoya talks about why he was so in love with Nagisa in such a genuine and heartwarming way. But that's all in the past now. You can't live in dreamland forever, especially when it means leaving someone important to you behind. And to show us his new resolve, we get a repeat of the I went potty by myself scene, but this time Tomoya wholeheartedly praises her. Just bravo. And as an encore, Akio and Sanai shed their Nagisa roleplay and come back into the bakery. We talk to Sanai first as we stand in Nagisa's room for the first time in 5 years. It hurts just to be in here, but it's not impossible like it was before. Tomoya thinks about all the hardships Sanai must have gone through because of him, and he says if there's anything at all that I can do, I'll do it. Sanai is confused, so Tomoya puts it in more direct terms. I'd like to spend the rest of my life making this up to you. And in response, Sanai says 3 words that expertly encapsulate who she is as a character and ingeniously made my eyeballs fucking throw up on the floor. Then be happy. Tomoya says he loves Sanai once again. Then Akio bursts into the room with perfect comedic timing to yell at him, making us smile in his own way. Then they go play baseball together, and man is it good to be back. Our work isn't done yet though. We still have an obligation to our dad, and wouldn't you know it, my theory about him is proved right as he asks Tomoya if he's done everything he needs to do. Another great heartwarming scene where 2 grown men bathe each other ensues. My favorite little detail being when he pats Ushio's head. Tomoya finally sees that warm smile on his dad's face that was buried in his distant memories again, and then we get a CG of him with that smile on full display. He leaves as Tomoya questions whether or not he led a happy life, but for us, that isn't up for interpretation as we receive another light orb. But enough about all this. Flower fields, positive change, familial love, it's all stupid and dumb compared to this moment. At long last, we can feast our eyes upon the promised land, and soak in the sheer wonder and joy that this character can give us. Please, allow me the honor of reintroducing you to Kyo Fujibayashi. Wait, what the fuck is this? The fuck is Ishii? Right, so remember when I told you to pick Kyo to be on your basketball team like 7 times? This is why. As you all know, I picked Tomoyo and am now paying the price for it. In fact, not seeing Kyo in this scene bothered me so much that I immediately quit out and started a new save so I could bring her back. Granted, it only took like 5 minutes because of fast forwarding, but the shame will stay with me forever. At least until I move on from it, which was a few months ago by now. Also, I'm pretty sure Ishii shows up in the anime as a sub for Kyo while she's off at training, which is a nice little Easter egg. Kyo is still the same old character, aka Peak, so there isn't much to complain about. And we see a familiar sense of comfort surrounding Tomoya, which he hides behind a grim smile. She hasn't changed at all. She says she got the gist of what happened and gives the whole must have been tough speech, before they get right back to where they left off, teasing each other, which is nice. But it definitely feels like they could have pushed the support she provides him with further. I know they couldn't, seeing as how her showing up is completely optional, so what can you do, yeah? At least she's here, and so is Botan, who is now large and scary, but is still our little friend on the inside. Well, that was pleasant. It'd be cool if another character we knew made a return as well. Oh, hi, Fuko.
Wait, I know you.
We find her along with Koko and Yusuke in the park. I love how Yusuke is playing with Fuko and laughing like a child, but then the second he notices Tomoya, he immediately regains his composure and tries to act all professional. I love how Koko almost cries when she hugs Ushio because she looks just like Nagisa, but then pulls herself together. And I really love Fuko's role in After Story. But before we get to that, these two have some news to share. They're finally getting married. At Sanai's request, she and Tomoya congratulate them, as well as Fuko for getting out of the hospital as loud as they can, right there in the park. Everyone around them stops what they're doing to turn and clap, and as the three thank them, Tomoya thinks to himself what a kind town this is. I know I promised this like 9 months ago, but here's your payoff for Fuko's route. She's out. Coco's finally gonna get married, everyone's ecstatic for them, and now I've got the light orb to prove it. We skip to October, the wedding happens. Coco, in the 7 years they've been sitting on this, still could not acquire a wedding dress, and we get another light orb. Alright, now on to Fuko. She is an unhinged little rat, and I love it. You'd think that tact would be, required when approaching a situation like Tomoya's, but Fuko doesn't give a fucko. Fuko can understand if you end up seeing traces of your wife in Fuko, unless we forget her other famous line, please be sure to watch your neck at night. She does, however, end up providing that bit of comfort that Kyo was missing, which is awesome. Tomoya starts to cry as Ushio describes Nagisa to Fuko, and she tells him she doesn't have any plans for a while, so he can invite her over anytime. That's nice. She still tries to kidnap his kid though. She also says she has her scent memorized, whatever that means. Wouldn't it be crazy if that was a setup for something down the line? Anyways, we have a little calm before the storm moment as we get more interactions with Kyo and Fuko as sports day quickly approaches. Tomoya gets back into his old groove as he asks Ushio if Kyo was bullying her, and that's good, because he'll need to be performing at his peak in all aspects of life if he's gonna have a chance at beating Akio in the relay. It's a head-to-head, one-on-one Clash of the Titans, Remember the Titans, Teen Titans Throwdown, and Ushio is sick. It's the same illness as Nagisa's, and there's nothing the doctors can do. So, I'll be the first to admit that this comes across as a little convenient at first glance. Honestly, whenever I show Clannad to people, I always get worried that they'll get fed up with this turn of events and quit out on me. But time and time again, I find that these fears are unwarranted. First of all, the likability of the characters makes you genuinely feel for them in times of distress. And while that doesn't carry you all the way, what picks up the rest of the slack is the consistency of the narrative. See, nowadays I don't see this scene as the writers trying to make me sad again like I originally did. It's no secret that Clannad loves its microcosms. The Hilda School represents the steep upward climb everyone takes in life, while the town seems to be a stand-in for life itself, constantly changing, evolving as new ideas and people enter the fray, swept up by the unstoppable flow of time just like everyone else. When Tomoya's at his lowest, he always says that he hates this town. In fact, that's the first thing we ever hear him say. And on the flip side, you'll remember that whenever he spoke positively about the town, it was when he was on Cloud 9. So when Ushio gets sick and the roller coaster descends, you can imagine what he says next. Is this town just toying with all of us? Does it give us happiness as a prank just to swipe it away from us later? Does it do that to sneer at us? To laugh at us as we drown in sorrow? I'll never forgive it. I swear I'll save her, even if I can't save anyone else. At the very least, I'll save her. This idea is expanded upon during the conversation Tomoya and Akio have in their secret spot, which by now isn't so secret anymore because it's a full-on hospital. Tomoya questions if Nagisa became connected to the town the moment she was saved in this very spot, and concludes that the town must find all this change painful, and that's why it's doing this. Akio swats away his theory, however, saying, I don't think pain has anything to do with it. It probably just feels like, oh, things are changing. He glances over at a little girl being sent out of the hospital with a bouquet of flowers. He then looks away as if he doesn't want to see it anymore and stubs his cigarette before delivering what is, in my opinion, his most iconic line. May happiness come to this town and its residents. That's all you can do, huh? Just hope? Pray? Change doesn't affect the town one bit, and it doesn't feel bothered by it, even if it makes people suffer? If there's no rhyme or reason, then what am I trying to do? What am I doing here? Tomoya ponders that last point as he walks Ushio to the train station in the snow. He knows she isn't going to get better, and she knows it too, which is why they're going to try to take that trip to the zoo they missed out on before the inevitable happens. They don't get very far, however, and a familiar scene plays out as a little girl struggles to stay alive in her father's arms while it's snowing. However, this time, their hopes don't come to pass. Back in the illusionary world, we see a bit of a triple parallel as the girl and the robot are struggling to make their way through the snow. The girl reveals that it's time for the robot to leave, but says she'll stay behind because she's the will of the world, whatever that means. The robot is distraught, but the girl spells out plainly the path to take from here. If there's ever someone you want to save, search for the light in the other world. Dango Daikazoku begins to faintly play in the background as both of them recognize the iconic tune, and as the screen fades to white, the girl says her goodbyes to her father. We're brought back to the title screen, and that concludes our first playthrough of After Story. Gotta say, that was a pretty sick cliffhanger to leave us on. Who would have thought that Tomoya was the robot and Ushio was the girl? Like, am I right? I really gotta hand it to the, Hey, what's with that look? What, you thought this was gonna be one straight shot? Nah, dude, this is a visual novel. We have 2 more playthroughs of After Story to go through, but don't worry, they're not nearly as long as the first. All you gotta do is reread a bunch of stuff and specifically choose one choice differently that you probably forgot all about in order to proceed. Did I mention that using a guide is a good idea? Said choice happens after about a minute and a half of fast forwarding, and as you might have guessed, we can finally do Akio sub-route. I would assume they did this to ensure that super careful players couldn't just steamroll through After Story all at once. You gotta do 3 runs just like everyone else. Anyways, this is a great little story that is criminally absent from the anime. I like how Nagisa convinces Akio to go watch his friends perform all by herself. By the way, Nagisa's alive again, say hi. I like the callback they set up by having Sanai tell Akio you always disappear the moment I look away. And I especially like how Tomoya essentially lives Akio's life while he's away, expanding upon their parallel more so than any other part in the game. He bakes bread, he hands out the stuff they don't sell to the neighbors, hell, he even plays baseball with the kids in the neighborhood like Akio always does. I love how he feels super self-conscious about disappointing the kids, but snaps out of it when he thinks about what Akio would do. He realizes that the old man wouldn't think at all, and so he just challenges one of the kids to a home run contest. And they have so much fun that before you know it, every kid in town has joined in. It's such a fun and wholesome moment. As Tomoya thinks about Akio while he falls asleep, he says what's on his mind to Nagisa. He's a guy who does whatever he wants, but it makes people happy and they depend on him. Huh. Does that remind you of anyone? Maybe somebody who just used to do whatever and then get wrapped up in other people's problems, ultimately helping them out in the end? You know, problems like trying to reform the drama club, being a ghost, being haunted by trauma, trying to save some sakura trees, or just simply being a coward? Well, no time to think about it. Because the next day, we catch wind that the bus Akio was taking to come back home was hijacked and he is now a hostage. Oh dear. Strange things keep happening as we watch the live news report. The bus keeps stopping to let more passengers off, starting with the women and children. And we catch wind that one of the passengers attempted to reason with the hijacker and was stabbed for doing so. Soon, everyone except the hijacker and the hostage who was stabbed are left on the bus. At another stop, the final hostage walks out of the bus, takes a megaphone from the police, shouts something, and then hops back on. And only when the news plays back the audio in a higher quality can we hear what this tall, red-haired man with a stab wound and a cigarette in his mouth had to say. We're going to be setting out on a trip now. We've actually clicked with each other. We've become friends. The boy has someone he wants to see, his grandmother who raised him when he was little. He says she'd been bedridden ever since 5 years ago. He doesn't know how she's doing right now, but despite that, he's going to come see her. Tomoya, Nagisa, and Sanai all begin to cry with smiles on their faces as they continue to watch. That's just the kind of guy the old man is. Dude can make friends with anyone, even if they just ran a knife through his abdomen. Soon, the bus stops, and Akio is taken to the hospital, where he promptly sneaks out. Jesus Christ. Tomoya finds him first and begins to scold him, before Akio cuts him off and says that the guy's grandma had already passed away, but he seemed to be content about it. He was the one who stopped the bus the final time after all, telling Akio he had done enough. Tomoya doesn't even realize what he's talking about for a second, it not occurring to him that hearing an update on this stranger would be anywhere near the forefront of his mind right now. Sanai then finds him and repeats that line about him running away with tears in her eyes, to which Akio responds by saying he'll always be with her. He may be a Dumbo who goes too far out of his way for others, but one thing that'll never change is his dedication to staying by her side. Akio is just the best, dude. I love how this sub-route explores his incredibly kind nature after so much of After Story focused on his more stoic and mature side. I feel like I've said all I can say about the man. He's just a perfect character, no two ways about it. And with that, we get the final light orb. We're brought back to the title screen once again, where we can see all the lights we've collected shining brightly. differently. Something's changed. And now I think we've got enough of them to do what we were told back in the illusionary world. Fast forwarding through Afterstory once again, we find ourselves back in the scene where Nagisa gives birth. Everything plays out the same, even down to us reappearing at the bottom of the hill to school as she begins to fade away. But as the bright light takes over, an even brighter light appears in Tomoya's hands. It's warm and it envelops his entire body as we're taken through the town. We begin to realize that our long journey is finally coming to an end. And as Tomoya reaches out, together with the countless stars, he finds his hand wrapped in Nagisa's. She did it. She survived. And so did Ushio. Still barely believing what he's seen as he gives Ushio her first bath, Tomoya hears Nagisa tell him to take a look outside. Upon drawing back the curtain, what first appears to be snow has begun to coat the town. But upon closer inspection, we realize that we're staring at light orbs, the physical embodiment of happiness covering this town, which represents life, all while this wonderful miracle takes place in it. As we continue to process what's taking place before our eyes, Nagisa begins to speak. If this town had a will and a heart, just like a person, and if it wished for the people who live in it to be happy, then perhaps this town was responsible for this miracle. Yeah, that makes sense. But actually, I guess that wouldn't be a miracle. People who love the town live in it, and the town loves those people back. Those kinds of thoughts come from the emotions that we all have. Not just this town, it's true for any town. We love the town, and the town nurtures us. That's what I think. Would you say that the town is one big family? Yeah, a big Dongo family. Oh, so that's how it was. Could she have known that since we first met? No, I'm sure she's known it for longer. That's why she can't hate anyone. She works hard for everyone's sake. Nagisa once again tells Tomoya that it's time for him to start liking the Big Dongo family. He responds that he already loves them, and Nagisa begins to sing Dongo Daikazoku. Tomoya can't help but laugh, then joins her mid-song before delivering his last line of dialogue. Let us sing forever. Let my memories from this day on be for this child and this town. The credits begin to roll, but Two Shadows has been replaced with a new song, a familiar one. The melody for Dongo Daikazoku enters our ears for the final time, now with lyrics that drop all the metaphors and any sense of subtlety to beautifully restate the main takeaway of the story, answering the first question that was ever posed to us in the game. I never do this while recording, I swear. Answering the first question that was ever posed to us in the game. Do you like this school? Or, peeling away the metaphor, do you like living? Even if trauma from the past makes things difficult, even if paralyzing fear stands in the way of what you want, even if your circumstances are beyond your control, even if you have to give up what you love for the greater good, even when misunderstandings cause turmoil for your relationships, even on the days when you aren't your best, and it seems like all you do is make mistakes, even if the world changes around you without you even noticing. The answer to all of these questions is a resounding yes. Because the time I spend with the people I care about, the work I put in to become a stronger person every day, and the inevitability of passing everything I've learned onto an even stronger generation is what makes it worth it. And that's what this is really all about, yeah? I bet that if 3 years ago somebody told me that a fictional story taught them the meaning of life, I'd say, whoa, cowboy, calm the hell down, it's just a story. But nowadays, though I doubt even I'd give Clannad that much credit, I am positive that it's come closer to doing that for me than any piece of media I've ever experienced. So if I can, I'd like to thank everyone who worked on this story. Whether you were on the original team, translated any of the English releases, worked on or acted in the anime, the side stories, the movie, hell, even if you're just a fan who's still keeping Clannad alive and well in the public eye after 19 years. Everyone who helped me make this series what it was, anyone who gave me advice, corrections, or even just a nice comment. The Clannad Discord for giving me the opportunity to document my full playthrough of the game and the creation of all these videos. I can't wait to look back on that text channel like it's a scrapbook full of memories, because in a way it is. And of course, the patrons who ensured that I could see this through to the end. All in all, Clannad is a story that I'm sure you know means a lot to me, and being able to explore it so thoroughly over, and being able to explore it so thoroughly over the last 11 months, longer than that if you count planning, has truly been a gift. The game, while it has some rough spots, is a wonderful experience that beats out every other story in my book. The humor, the drama, the characters, it's too much for me to briefly put into words. The KyoAni anime is as good of an adaptation as one could be for this story, and the sheer artistry behind so many shots live inside my head rent-free to this day. Tomoya is the perfect protagonist, who, if you've seen the first After Story video, you know I relate to a lot. The way he thinks deeply about things, often to his own detriment, his cowardly behavior juxtaposed by his clear appreciation for interacting with others, his short temper, his determination and drive to succeed once he gets invested in something, his god-awful sense of humor that mostly stems from making fun of everyone he meets because A, it's funny, and B, somewhere inside him it makes him feel comfortable that there are people out there who let him get away with it. I could go on, but you and I both know I'm just stalling at this point. By sheer happenstance, this video is going to be uploaded either the day of or the day after I graduate from college. I don't know what comes next. All I know is that change is inevitable, even in places like this YouTube channel for instance. Nothing can stay the same forever, but even so, I'll continue to walk forward up this long, long hill, and I hope that all of you will join me. So, for one final send-off to this story, I'll just thank you one last time for giving me so much joy and distress, in a good way of course, for being perfect, at least for me, and for being Clannad.
Just like the wind, I've always been drifting high up in a sky that never ends. Through thick and thin, I always win, 'cause I will fight both life and death to save a friend. I face my destiny every day I live, and the best in me is all I have to give. Just like the sun, when my day's done. Sometimes I don't like the person I've become. Is the enemy within our thousand men? Should I walk the path my words so bad I have? Is someone testing me every day I live? Well, the best in me is all I have to give. I can't pretend. I am the wind. And I don't know if I will pass this way again. All things must end. Goodbye, my friend. Think of me when you see the sun or feel the wind.
Also, I'm obligated to shout out the patron names even though it's a little awkward, so here you go. Special thanks to Silent Secondary, Mr. Chocolate Salmon, Make It Totter, and the rest of my wonderful patrons. I'll see you guys next time.